Dogman came to my house for trick or treat. Dear Scary Stories NYC, let me tell you a true Dogman story that happened to me and my sister a few Halloweens ago. We were left in charge of handing out Halloween candy while my mom had to work late at her job. Everything went fine until a loud knock on the door turned out to be a visit from the Dogman. Don't get me wrong, nobody else knocked all night, they all rang the bell. And you know how it goes. Mainly really young kids, some older sugar junkies out past their prime. The majority of the costumes were made by people's moms, it seemed to me, which is fine. 3 teenage boys dressed up in some fancy superhero costumes, superheroes that I didn't recognize. Their costumes did fancy things, like they could make their capes flap behind themselves somehow. I would call it more cosplay than Halloween costume. It was quite elaborate. I wanted to tell you that so that you'd understand why. When I looked out the window and saw the Dogman, I thought it was an elaborate cosplay Halloween werewolf costume. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me just tell you how it happened. My sister had some old 80s or 90s horror film on that we were half watching, and it had gotten to a really scary, quiet part of the film when bam, 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 someone either banged on our door or fell into it, I'm not sure which. The two of us jumped out of our seats, then laughed at ourselves. The combination of the movie and whoever that was outside had combined to spook us, and so afterward we were laughing in relief. I was still chuckling when I grabbed our 2 bowls of candy and glanced out the window to see who was there. I could only see part of this guy's costume. He was so tall, but I could tell it was a werewolf, sort of a cosplay, just by looking at the legs and feet. I was like, wow, that's a good one, and I called out to my sister that she was going to want to come over and take a look at this costume. I opened the door, and the guy had built a costume so tall that his head was up way too far for me to see it. I wondered where the guy's feet went into those legs and where his head was. Probably someplace in the chest. There must be some way he can breathe and see out, I thought. He didn't say trick or treat, and I wanted a closer look at the costume, so I opened the screen door and I took a step outside. Before I could look up, something dripped onto my head. That was odd. It didn't look like it was going to rain. I glanced upward and got another drip right on my face, coming from the most realistic-looking werewolf mouth I had ever seen. There were 2 rows of dagger-like teeth. There was a long canine tongue. There was the hot breath, which smelled like he had been eating his own poo. This was the perfect werewolf or dogman costume. I was truly impressed. The big guy grabbed up the little candy bars with both of his hands, or paws, each candy individually wrapped in its own little plastic wrapper. He shoved them into that giant dogman mouth. It really truly looked like he was eating them. I smiled and laughed, thoroughly entertained by his messy performance. I held out the bowls of candy, and he took more, eating them, wrappers and all. I was giggling and enjoying myself when I turned inside to call my sister over again. When I looked, though, I saw that she was actually already right there behind me. Only she wasn't laughing like I was. In fact, she looked horrified. And then, looking past me at the big trick-or-treater, she screamed. And when she did that, our giant visitor grew irate, pushing both bowls out of my hands, candy bars flying in all directions. That cosplayer leaned forward, bending down so that he could see inside our door at my sister, and then he roared so loudly that my ears were instantly ringing. That was not a teenager in a high-quality cosplay outfit. That was not a trick-or-treater. That was some kind of real, actual something. Whether it was a dogman, wolfman, rougarou, skinwalker, I don't really know. But it was big. It was feral. And it was hopped up on sugar. It was also extremely upset that my sister had screamed at it. The next thing I did turned out to be kind of suave, but that was purely by accident. What happened was that I just sort of noped back into the house. After that dogman screamed, I walked backward 2 or 3 steps, calmly closing the door. I locked one lock, then another, then the third and final one. I was surprised when I turned around to find my sister still screaming in terror. I literally couldn't hear her. Or actually, I sort of could. I just hadn't realized that she was part of the high-pitched whining squeal that my ears were ringing with. We went upstairs because it felt safer up there. I wanted to call the cops, but I had to wait because of the ringing in my ears. We watched the creature out of various windows. He walked around the house, and we walked from room to room upstairs following his path. Our house is the last one on a dead-end street right by the woods, and that had to have been where the dogman came from, the woods of northern Wisconsin. I expect that's where he returned to as well, although not in the same direction. We lost sight of him in the back of the house finally, and I don't think he ever went back into the street in front of the house. My sister's ears felt better than mine did, and she wanted to call the cops. The creature was gone already, so I didn't think she really even needed to. Mom called her randomly at that point, and my sister told her the entire story, crying through most of it. I didn't hear my mother's side of the conversation, but according to my sister, she was just like, "Okay, well then I'll pick up some more candy on my way home." She just cared that we ran out of candy because of the dogman. I don't think she ever really understood that we were trying to tell her that there was an actual wolfman on the front porch. She must have thought we were saying it was someone in a wolfman costume. She was having such a hard time at work with her new boss back then that neither I nor my sister felt like it was worth it to press the point with her. I mean, it was nice of her to pick up some more candy for the last few stragglers as they came trick-or-treating. Better to just leave it at that. So over the next day or two, my sister and I went around talking to some of the neighbors. Nobody else saw that dog-headed thing that she and I saw. It seems that there are no other witnesses to back up my claim that Dogman came to my house for trick-or-treat. Dogman came to my Halloween party. Dear Scary Stories, NYC. This is a story from a dozen years ago when I still lived with my parents in a medium-sized suburban area in western Pennsylvania. Mom and Dad had gone for a 2-week vacation, leaving me and my older brother in charge of the house. Naturally, we had a Halloween party. Unnaturally, the Dogman crashed it. We lived on the eastern fringes of Youngstown, Pennsylvania. Not in the main part of town, but off in the woods outside of the main traffic areas. My parents don't go in for anything cheap. We had a nice home to grow up in, surrounded by the woods to play in. We had a tree house, we had a backyard in-ground pool. We had a good and easy childhood. This was my brother's senior year, and his last one spending Halloween at home. We both knew that, and we were both excited about growing up. This would be the first time we would throw the kind of party that adults throw, and we were feeling quite sophisticated. That would all come crashing down fast once the Dogman put in his appearance. We might as well just jump straight to when that happened. No sense in keeping you waiting for it. We were all very loose, but very peppy, very happy. The music was blasting, and we had kids coming from all directions. Young adults. Most of them either drove over or were driven over, but there were almost as many that arrived by walking through the woods to get there. Not all the parents were hip, with their teenager attending a party that had no chaperone. Those people tended to be not in costume, but we had some nice Halloween get-ups on some of the other people. Well, I'll be honest. Mainly, there were some young ladies with very attractive outfits. There was one guy who was the Hulk. He had nice chest, leg, and arm attachments to pull it off in a cartoony way. I heard a commotion out in front of the house. Some girls were screaming. I wanted to scream too. Whoever had scared those girls, I wanted them to do the same act on me. So I opened the front door, and I looked around. There was nobody there. So who had screamed? I was about to go back inside when I heard the same scream again, but this time coming from around the corner of the house. I recognized it as coming from one of my classmates, and she was shouting, get away, over and over again. My heart started racing. I imagined she was being attacked, and I hoped it was someone small because I charged into action unarmed. I ran around the corner of the house because I had heard the sound coming from down the driveway. When I rounded that turn, what I saw made no sense to me for the first few seconds. I saw the classmate that I had mentioned earlier, and she was backed up against this big old tree that was on the side of the garage. And with his back to me facing her, apparently threatening her, was this big animal that stood on two legs. It really looked like a Bigfoot from behind, or what I had heard Bigfoot look like. I knew two people in my school that had claimed to see Sasquatch in that area, so it's not that far a stretch for me to have jumped to that conclusion. I mean, this creature seemed outrageously tall, something crazy like 8 feet, maybe, I don't know. It sounds impossible, but he really seemed like he was 1.5 times as big as my classmate. Now I was frozen. I almost dirtied my underpants. I mean, every instinct inside me told me to be grateful he was facing the girl and not me. My body was aching to just slowly, quietly sneak out of there. But then my classmates started screaming my name and begging for help, so I couldn't just run away. I looked around for something I could use as a weapon, but found nothing. When I looked up again, the creature I thought was a Bigfoot had turned around to face me. It took a few steps forward into the light, and I could see that this was no Bigfoot. For one thing, it didn't have big feet. It had dog feet. Maybe it should be called Dogfoot. It stepped onto the concrete, and its dog claws made that same noise that your dog's claws make when you take him for a walk on the sidewalk. His head looked an awful lot like a dog's head, too. Well, it looked more like a dog's head than it looked like a Bigfoot's anyway. I mean, it had the dog ears up on top. In between the canine head and legs, there wasn't too much about this upright bipedal creature that seemed very dog-like. To be honest, it really felt like I was looking at some sort of prehistoric man. I know it was an animal with a dog head, but I had more of the impression that I was encountering a very primitive, savage, and dangerous kind of human being. Or if not human, at least some sort of man, some sort of sentient being. Of course, this was the kind of sentient being that was probably also a human eater. I couldn't look at its eyes when I tried because they glowed in this extremely intimidating way. I don't quite know why they were scary, but they petrified me. The dog head man thing growled like a bear and walked a little bit more toward me. That time I really did mess my pants up. I wanted to cry and I wanted to run. I suddenly realized it would have been wrong to run away while the dogman was threatening my female classmate. But there was no rule against me running away now that the dogman was menacing me. So I ran. I turned tail and I ran. My face was red, my pants were nasty. I thought I was going to get clawed up from behind, and I never ran so hard before in my life. I was inside before I looked behind me. Some people were partying there, oblivious that anything strange might be going on outside. They laughed at me and asked me why I was panting so hard. I couldn't even speak yet. I was hyperventilating, but I pointed behind me, out the window. They got up and walked over to look outside. Then they asked me again, well, what's going on? When I finally had the strength to look outside myself, I saw that there was nobody there outside the window. I felt a sense of relief. The dogman must have left. The danger must be over. That was when I heard the screams from the back of the house. I staggered back there as well as I could, and I found my brother and some girls trying to push the back door shut, while two very long, very hairy arms from outside tried to push the door back open. It was like a rope pull in reverse. I ran to join them, but there wasn't really any room left. I replaced the smallest girl instead, figuring I should be at least a little stronger than she was. Once I got into place, I stood up and put all my weight into the project at hand, which was keeping the Dogman out of our house. To say that I had a stake in it would be an understatement, but at that age, I wasn't really thinking that I was going to be murdered. I was actually more concerned about how angry my mother and father were going to be if I let a carnivorous man-eating predator into their home. Not to mention, if anyone got torn apart or eaten, it would be my fault, so to my young mind, I was pushing against the door in hopes that there could somehow still be a happy ending when all this was over. I remember looking up at the little windows in the very top of the door, and I remember seeing the ears of that Dogman. They were tall and thin and hairy, in a raggedy-looking way. I wondered if this monster was diseased. I wondered if his scratch might carry bacteria and illness, so that even if you survived, you'd still be in a bad situation. I had heard that about some other animal in school, that its scratches could kill, but don't ask me so many years later which animal it was. Maybe a Komodo dragon or something? But anyway, I was scared spitless that we were all going to have our life stories grind to a terrible, painful halt, some of us all at once, and the rest of us in an agonizingly slow manner. It started to feel like we were losing the battle of the door. I saw the door edge a little bit more open, and I saw that large Dogman paw, as big as my head, long, sharp claws protruding from it. And I remember thinking, this is the beginning of the end. And then I heard a siren and I saw flashing lights growing brighter outside. Someone had called the cops. It turned out it was not because of the Dogman, but it was because one of the kids was lying to their parents about where they were going or something. I was praying that they sent the cool cop. We used to call him Will, but that wasn't his real name. He was fair with us. He let us off easy when we were doing things we shouldn't have been doing. He didn't rat us out to our parents. And best of all, he was big and athletic. Not as big and athletic as this Dogman, of course, but he'd be a definite plus for our side. They didn't send Will, though. They sent Floyd. Floyd the idiot cop. We nicknamed him Floyd after Floyd the barber from the Andy Mayberry show, but it was a mistake. We really meant to name him after that goofy deputy. I still can't remember his name. Anyway, Floyd stuck as the nickname, and he never found out that was what we called him. He was not really in good shape or intimidating in any way. Well, actually, he was intimidating in one way, which was that he was a nasty gossip, and I knew that my mother was definitely going to hear about all of this. It turned out it really didn't matter which cop they sent because the Dogman didn't like the siren and the flashing lights. He split as the dimwit approached, and of course Floyd never noticed the Dogman as he made his egress. I mean, why would a cop be observant, right? So Floyd made everyone go home, and that's the end of the Dogman part of the story. You're not interested in how much trouble my brother and I got in, so I guess I'll wrap this up. It's been a few years since all this happened, and I can't even remember the names of most of my friends who were there. Because of my distance from the story and time, I kind of joke around a little when I tell it. But I wasn't joking when I talked about how scared I was. If anything, I don't think I emphasized that part enough. I've never had that kind of a physical reaction to fear again in my life. I think my body thought that we were goners in that moment. That's really what I think. So if someone comes to you and tells you that they've seen a Dogman, please respect that they've gone through something traumatic. My therapist always tells me that traumatic events can be useful tools or even effective teachers for us if we decide to use them in that way. She says that we can use bad events and hard times to learn lessons from life that we would never have the chance to learn if everything were going easy and smoothly. That may be true, but I didn't learn a single thing the night that Dogman came to my Halloween party. They're quite badass, I must confess. Today's EP is named CS. Please join me in thanking today's executive producer CS, our newest $10 channel member. That means they not only get to see our secret uncensored stories far too wild to ever run on this channel, but they also get to watch all 21 hours of our archived uncensored Dogman stories, plus whatever secret shows we put out each Wednesday. In addition, whenever possible, CS gets to see the shows in advance of the general public. Thanks, CS. This episode couldn't have been possible without you. If you'd like to help us stay online as well as get to see all that stuff that CS gets to see, then you can either join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com, or else you can do what CS did and click the join link under this or any of our videos and become a channel member. A brand new way you can help us out is by checking out our new merch, which we have been putting into the store. It's taking some time before it shows up here on YouTube, but maybe you're seeing it when you're watching this in the future. You notice my new Scary Stories NYC mug, which is our first item for sale. We took suggestions from you guys in a community post recently, and we're trying to make as many of those ideas happen as possible. Henry and I have been posing for new pictures so that we can be made into merch for you. Speaking of Hank, here he is with the wrap-up. Take it away, Henry. Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it with your friends and family that you think might also be interested. If you would like to see more of our work, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube will alert you when we put out a new video. To become a channel member and gain access to our special perks, you can click that join link under each of our videos. Another option is to join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. You can join for as little as 99 cents on YouTube or $1.50 at peterbernard.com, and that gains you access to our weekly secret uncensored episodes. If you'd like to see our 21 hours of archives of uncensored Dogman stories, then please join at the $3 level or above. To get to watch our shows in advance of the public, please join at our $10 level. That gets you all the perks. If you join our channel memberships, you need to check our community page here on YouTube in order to get the links to the secret videos and other perks. If you're in the PayPal subscribers club, Peter will email you all the news and links himself. Once joining the PayPal club, which is Peter's homemade club, please give him a chance to see that you've joined and to compose you a personal welcome email, as none of that is automated. But whichever you join, we'll name you an executive producer for the next available episode. Do you have a scary experience that you'd like to share with us? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LA-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. It's a Google voicemail box, so that means it keeps cutting off after every 3 minutes. If your story is longer than that, please keep calling back and we can piece it together on our end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.